Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today. Is my microphone on? It is on. Why do I hear no feedback whatsoever for my mic? Is my replay on? Hold on. Direct monitor. It is on. This doesn't sound right though. Like I feel like I don't hear myself, which I normally do. What if I hold on? What if I mute myself and try again? Turn it on. How does that sound? I don't know. Am I in my own head about this? What if I take off my... No, hold on. Maybe this is right. I don't know. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 7:13 PM on Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. As you can probably tell by today's title, we'll be talking about Railbound, the game which I finished. I actually finished it like a week ago or something, but I genuinely just forgot to make an Animal Crossing review of it. And... I was reminded because of Cavalcadence's, of course, comment. It's always Cavalcadence, don't you worry. Never had to remember who left that comment. I don't even know what I was getting on this. But yeah, you know, thank you very much for a reminder so I can actually talk about it. It's been a week or like over a week, so I'm not sure if I'm going to remember exactly everything like about the game and what I wanted to say about it. But I would say on the whole, I think it's a pretty decent puzzle game. You know, it's pretty good. I don't think it makes it into like... I don't know, like, hold on, like, let me think about it, like, what would my top 5 be? Like, definitely Babra's Use up there, Talos Principle must be up there, I think Witness has to be up there, as well, despite the fact I wasn't too, like, crazy by the whole exploration part of it. I just think it's, like, a really, like, well-made game, or, well, very interestingly made game, I suppose, enough that it's evocative of, you know, makes you think. Okay, I don't know, maybe it's, like, bordering on, like, you know, the sort of like a precipice of top 5-ish or something, but on the whole, I think if you like puzzle games, it's a great game to play, certainly, but it's, I will say, you know, on the other hand, I think it's a little bit inconsistent with itself sometimes, because some levels are like really good, they're like fantastic, but I think by the nature of the mechanics of a game in the first place, that it falls a lot into the sort of like trial and error style of problem solving, which is not exactly like like, I don't mind, like, trial improvement, of course, that sort of thing, but sometimes it very much falls into a trap of, not the trap so much of falls into the thing of being like, this feels impossible to even, like, logically deduce anything. It feels like you just, like, kind of had to guess it and see what happens. If it basically feels like, you can, a lot of the harder levels end up being, oh, you can sort of, like, deduce about 70% of it, and the last 30% is about sort of, like, trial and error, as you sort of trying to finagle your way through the exact timings you need. But I respect it because I think it's a very interesting, like, core mechanic it has going on as a game. I mean, I guess there'll be, like, spoiler warning for this game, but this is not really a spoiler sort of game. I'm not going to, like, spoil exactly how to solve certain levels because I don't think I can remember all of them honestly off the top of my head. But I will say, aesthetically, it's a very, very clean sort of game. Simple. Like, if it's not on mobile, I feel like it should be a mobile game as well. It should be, like, on mobile. Like, the same way that Cosmic Express was that sort of thing, except for I like Railbound's aesthetic a bit more than Cosmic Express's personally, but... Who am I, I suppose, necessarily to judge in this concept? So if you didn't watch a Railbound Let's Play, but you were still curious, I suppose, on what's going on, Railbound is basically a track-laying puzzle game. You're basically trying to direct a train car from point A to point B, and then sometimes you have to achieve, like, optional objectives along the way. And then the main gimmick is often that there will be multiple train cars, and you have to get them in order to the end without things crashing. So it's an interesting sort of like track laying, I suppose, puzzle game, like path laying puzzle game in the first place, but it also has this very interesting element of timing being a very important factor in the game as well, which is what I respect about it, is the fact that it's novel, I suppose, in that sense. Having like the dimension of time also be a very important part of this game in the first place. It does certainly adds a very nice like dimension to the game, but at the same time it does make it like exponentially more complicated in some aspects. Sometimes it can get like really out of control, difficult, where it's just like the entire thing is not inherently unpredictable, but like pretty unpredictable at what you do, and then thus you find yourself in a lot of harder levels basically coming up with like a vague idea for a solution, and then basically being like, okay, now I just sort of like mess around with the tracks until the timings work out, which some people might be like, yeah, that's sort of my jam when it comes to puzzle games. I like trial and improvement. I like sort of like getting stuck in and experimenting with it, in which case, if you like that sort of puzzle game, this is a really I'm not sure if it's the best sort of like experimental puzzle game for you, because it sort of like lies halfway between a logical deduction puzzle game and like a game where you have to do a lot of experimentation at the same time. So if you like a sort of best of both worlds, then I guess this is really quite a fantastic puzzle game for you. I myself personally definitely lean a lot harder on the logical deduction side of puzzles, but doesn't mean I don't appreciate, I suppose, the trial and improvement side of games that video games that comes with it as well. But yeah, I think it also, yeah, I think that's like the main deficit to the game, is that sometimes the puzzles are just like, every puzzle game always has a few levels where completely out there solutions, completely where you look at it and be like, this is like a moon logic almost, where it's just like, I don't know how I was even meant to conceive of a solution. And the interesting part with puzzle games though is that it's often a different level for every single person. Which is fair, because everyone's got different strengths and weaknesses. People have different like perspectives and will see things in a different light compared to other people. That's just by nature of a way of people being different. But Railbound, I feel like it has not significantly more of them, because there weren't too many games but there weren't too many levels where I was like, this is completely like insane, like I don't even know how I was meant to think of that solution. There was a handful, certainly, but most of them I would say land into like the 70% mark, where I was like, okay, I felt like I sort of like guessed my way to finding the actual final solution, which is fine, but it's like it's just something different, which I respect it for, and I very much respect it for being different rather than just being so straightforward, I suppose, of being like get level, solve level, and that sort of thing. It's like get level, then start experimenting as you start finding yourself down dead ends and see where you can go from there. So yeah, that's I think the main deficit of Railbound. What's some other nice positives about it? I think, as I said before, aesthetically, it's a very nice looking puzzle game. It's very clean. It's got a thematic. It sticks with it the entire way. Like all the mechanics it creates, and like for the puzzles and the levels and that sort of thing, all feed into this one thematic. So it's sort of like it's perfectly encapsulating it, if anything. Which is awesome, I love it when something has an aesthetic, it has a thematic, and it's like, yes, you know what, this is how it's going to be. We're going to stick with this. We know how we're going to work with this. And it does it so well. Like, obviously, the sort of train thematic was sort of like low-key, simpler, the polygonal sort of style, I suppose, that comes with it. Is cool. No, Rainy Island. It's been a while since we had a Rainy Island. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think aesthetically is very, very strong. It's cool as well. And the fact that it's even like continuously getting content updates, I suppose, is really cool, because as I was recording the game, the Let's Play, like it got a content update for like some more accessibility options. It got like a whole new world or two or something like that was added just like randomly, which is awesome, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, I think the mechanics they introduced, I think they're all pretty interesting. I think the semaphore might be my favorite one, because it feels really straightforward to begin with, but then there ends up being a lot of sort of caveats as you use it as well, to be like, this is like, how should I explain this? Like, it's very direct, I suppose, with what you do. Like, you use it to hold back a train, and then you release it when it passes a semaphore. And it's like, okay, that's like how the first like few levels start out, and it feels very direct and straightforward. But then you start getting to things being like, oh, the fact that it releases on immediately the first one that it sees means there's now like a little twist to it, where it's like, okay, now I need to start thinking a little bit more about exactly where I place each of these elements, because now that train will be released the first time no matter what. I need to think about like, how can I make it only be released the second time, or things like that, or how can I put it in a place to like and actually make the directions work out for me and stuff like that. I think it adds an interesting sort of layer to it. I think the switching tracks are like a very reasonable one, but they end up being like incredibly confusing to work with. Like they're like one of the ones which makes it the hardest to see exactly what's going to happen. And I mean the ones where they drive over a track and it switches, not the ones where you push a button and it like opens or closes something, it toggles something, which I think is fine, but like it does inherently make a lot of levels quite chaotic. I always think of that one where it's just like, I can't remember what it was. It's like four train cars or something, and it goes down like this path where there's like 7 or something like toggle tracks which you walk on, or it walks on and then like switches in, and it's just like, I don't even know how you're meant to like think through logically how any of this pans out, because it's so insanely difficult to plan ahead for that. You just got to experiment and send it and see what happens. Yeah, but apart from that, I'm not sure there's much else to say about Railbound in that sense. Why? Because I think it's quite a direct sort of game. Like, it wears its heart on its sleeve. It doesn't have like hidden tricks or gimmicks necessarily behind it. You might say, you argue that to the contrary, which is totally fair, but I think it's a very sort of like direct game where it's like, hey, you know exactly what's gonna happen when you're playing this game. You're gonna be introduced to this mechanic, and then like rails, and then you'll stick with it for a while, and then you'll get a new mechanic in the next one, and then you'll get a new mechanic in the next one, and then eventually you'll start getting crossovers and stuff like that. I will say, actually, this is another thing I can think of, which is to the deficit of Railbound. It's a very minor thing, but with puzzle games, I think they tend to be best when they don't have such a linear pathway to them. Because a thing which is an issue is often, you know, you'll get stuck on a puzzle game, you won't know the solution. What do? The best thing to do is like just take a break and come back to it. But often, you know, you want to keep playing a game. You don't want to just like stop every single time you find a level you don't know how to solve. So, you know, what's the next best thing to do? You go try a different level and try and solve that, and you'll come back to this level later. The thing with Railbound is because it's all linear, it means that if you can't solve one level, you can't go to the next level, because it's all in a direct line. And I understand it's all in a direct line because it's meant to fit in thematically, I suppose, with the railway sort of like vibes and aesthetics that's going on. But it does lead to a deficit, whereas it's like if you ever get stuck on like a main level, which I'm sure people will, like I'm sure I did. I can't really think of what a time I did off the top of my head, but I'm sure it happened. You're just kind of like doomed. Like, what do? Like, you go to the bonus levels, I suppose, and try and solve those, but those are harder than the main levels. It would be nice, I suppose, if it could do some sort of like parallelism to the level selection, so you know you can actually choose different ones as you go, rather than having just like the same track. Or maybe like free worlds can, I don't know. It's just like, it's a very minor nitpick, but it does actually prove quite like important, in my opinion, for a puzzle game. But I understand that they did it more for like not a cosmetic choice, for the choice of directional choice, I suppose, more than anything, which is fine. You know, like, I'm not going to try and control that for them or anything like that. It's just how it is. But yeah, as I say, Railbound is just like, it's just like a very direct game. I don't really have much else to say about it, because it is what it is. If you don't like puzzle games, you're not going to like this game, like, because it is just a puzzle game, to be perfectly honest. Whereas, like, it doesn't have like a hidden story behind it or hidden lore. It doesn't try and like weave in any other mechanics. It wears its heart on its sleeve. It wears its heart, or maybe like engine, on its sleeve. It is just a puzzle game. But if you do like puzzle games, I would recommend playing it. I think it's a unique, I'm not sure if it's a unique take on the puzzle genre, because I wouldn't go that far, but it's a unique, like, it makes you change your way of thinking compared to other puzzle games, which I applaud it for. Like, and what's the point? You know, one of the greatest things about puzzle games is allowing yourself to be, I suppose, be intellectually stimulated in some form or another. But if you only have the same sort of stimulus over and over and over again, then that's not really the most, you know, challenging material, I suppose, that you could be exposed to. You're not really going to stretch your, not the limits of your brain, but you're not really going to like test your brain if you just do the same thing over and over and over again. So the fact that it is a change up, and it's the fact that I don't know of another game which has a similar sort of style time element to it, like maybe like Braid, but like that time element, I suppose, is much more interwoven within the actual gameplay mechanics itself, I suppose, like playing around with time versus like time being an element of it. I don't know. I'm trying to think, like obviously we're judging this game from very much like a puzzle game standpoint, because you're meant to. It's, well, a puzzle game. I mean, that much is certainly clear. But those are the metrics that we sort of should be abiding by, in my opinion. We should be thinking it from a puzzle perspective. So, like, what are the deficits and benefits from a puzzle game perspective of this game, rather than anything else? Because you go like, oh, this game has no story, or duh. But like, you're not going to play this game for its story, probably. Yes, I'm just trying to think more from that perspective. What else? I'm trying to think if there's any levels I found were just like, this was a stupid level. Surprisingly, I don't think there were any levels I played and I was like, this is ridiculous. Not in the sense that I couldn't solve it, but like I was like, this is just like not either like not interesting or goes counter, I suppose, to everything like mechanics that it taught us. I think because it's like base mechanics it has is very, very tight. There are no like mechanic interactions where I was just like, this is rubbish. Like certainly that must have happened a couple of times during Baba Is You, like where the interactions are like really, really unintuitive with how it works, and it's more just like it works that way because of like a behind the scenes order priority that gets resolved rather than necessarily because it feels inherently how it should work. But you know, you might be like, oh, there's also like with teaching women, I suppose, with that as well. I'm trying to think of something. There was definitely something with like push and something which one of my friends was, when she played Baba Is You, was talking about it, and I was like, that's an interesting sort of thing. I just sort of like in like subconsciously been like, oh, there's like an order of priority behind things like behind the scenes, but like, you know, because it's not explicitly spelled out, it doesn't mean it's, or like it's not like really taught, I suppose, throughout the game. It feels like not necessarily cheap, but it feels like random, I suppose. But like I can't think of something like that for Railbound. I feel like it's pretty consistent. It's a very internally consistent game, despite all the mechanics it has working around with each other. I think what would be nice if it had like a rewind function when you're like playing the level just to see what happens. It has like speed up and slow down, but there's many times where I just wanted like a short rewind, being like, oh, I completely missed what happened. Like, can I jump back like a couple of seconds just to see what occurred? But it can't do that, which is like fine. It's just how it is, I suppose. But and I'm sure like with computing power maybe it's like too difficult, it doesn't save stuff like that. I don't know what is going on behind the scenes, but it would be nice, I think, of like just as a functionality thing. I also think like whenever you have like a track which is like a T track, which is like it goes into 3 different directions, sometimes like choosing the directions that you want to have selected can be a little bit finicky. It's got a really simplistic control scheme where you just like drag to put stuff down, and when you click it again to sort of like toggle it, I guess, which is both to its deficit and benefit, I think. I don't know what else can I say about Railbound. It's just like a good, it's a good game. It's not like mind-blowing, I think, but it's a very much enjoyable enough time that, especially if you like puzzle games, I would recommend it. I don't know what else to say about it. Let's see what the public consensus is at this point. Overwhelmingly positive reviews. Not surprised. Yeah, very cute art, simplistic, and then it gets very, very challenging, but it does feel quite iterative, I suppose. So it depends on like what sort of challenge you like in puzzle games. Oh, it is on the phone. That makes perfect sense because it feels like it should be with its very simplistic controls and minimalist style HUD and designs. Is it Wikipedia? I'm just trying to see what the critical consensus was on it. 8 out of 10. I think that's a perfectly fair sort of score for this game. Based on the simplicity of its tap and drag system for placing rails, yeah, like it feels perfect for mobile. Like if I was playing it on mobile, I'd be like, oh, I love like this control scheme, but because I guess I was playing on my computer, I was like, you know, it's now like too minimalist for it, which is, you know, it's like, what are you going to do about it? And like make a different control scheme for your computer? No, that's stupid. But it definitely felt a little bit more finicky, I suppose. But that's also because a mobile phone doesn't always have the best control options compared to like a computer necessarily does. Rock, Paper, Shotgun describes it as a hint system done right. Okay. The difficulty received mixed feedback. Especially in later levels when mechanics were combined, a problem made worse by skipping optional levels. Interesting. The divide of a game into core and optional levels was controversial. Some of the optional levels should have been integrated into a core path. Yeah, I to a certain sense, I guess I see where they're coming from. But the fact it's a very linear design of a game, it means it now, rather than being like, oh, you had to solve like in Baba Is You, you had to solve a certain amount of levels to unlock the next world, so it doesn't, you can pick and choose which ones you want to solve. It's like you have to solve these levels to progress, and the others are just for funsies. But a lot of it, yeah, and I agree, a lot of the for funsies sort of levels end up being like some really interesting ones in its own right. Where in Baba Is You, they feel like, I suppose, evolutions of a level. In Railbound, I guess by design of the nature of how the level progression works, they feel like optional. And I see where you're coming at. Hint system done right, offering small clues to allow player runes to solve a puzzle. I didn't even know there was a hint system in the game, but sure. Set out increases. Doesn't spoon you. Criticize a small play area led to many levels having only one solution. Interesting criticism for it. Many puzzle games do have like just one solution. So to me, that doesn't feel like a point worth criticizing for. And you know, often as discussions with cavalcadons end up going, a lot of levels do end up having like many solutions, to be perfectly honest. some like, if anything, that's like to its deficit, where I feel like some other solutions felt like so I was gonna say degenerate, but that's like too strong a word in a colloquial sense. Like, so they're too degenerative that they don't feel like satisfying solutions to a level, because it's like, oh, I didn't like engage with the mechanics of this level at all, or something like that. But it's, I understand by the nature of like how much movement and I suppose control you have over the exact paths of the trains take can lead to like a whole spider web, a whole ridiculous decision tree of possible solutions for these levels in the first place, which makes it pretty difficult to like catch all the cases. Certainly. So yeah, I don't know, like only having one solution feels like a very weird criticism to me personally, but hey ho, especially because it's not true. Especially when with later levels, but earlier levels I guess, but also the early levels are kind of tutorialized. But to be fair, that's just someone else's perspective, and that's just kind of how things should be. Everyone should have different perspectives, otherwise what's the point? So yeah, I don't know, Railbound. It's an enjoyable game. If you like puzzle games, definitely pick it up. If you don't like puzzle games, I would not recommend it for you. What more can I say? I guess because it's not like a great entry level sort of puzzle game. And it doesn't do anything which is particularly interesting outside of its puzzle elements, which is fine. It doesn't need to. Like, I don't think like you should expect every single game to be like Baldur's Gate 3, I suppose, of the genre, or anything like that, or just like execute it like it just needs a solid core idea and concepts and mechanics, which it does has, and it just executes them well, which it does. So you don't really need anything more than that, in my opinion. Anyway, I think I'll round this episode up here. But Railbound, yeah, fun game, I'd say. And I'd say 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 seems like a pretty reasonable like rating for it. But I'm going to round this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.